Northwest Arkansas. Anchored by the University of Arkansas, the world-famous Crystal Bridges Museum of American Art, the renowned Arvis Ballpark, home to the Naturals, and the most intact Civil War battlefield in the country, Pea Ridge National Military Park. But history doesn't just end there. A small town between Springdale and Siloam Springs has been a historical figurehead for over a century. Tontitown, a place of hope for Italian immigrants in the late 1800s. A beautiful town of culture and vineyards with streets named after families that have inhabited its land since its establishment. Led by the Catholic father Pietro Bandini, around 40 families moved northwest from Sunnyside, now known as Lake Village, to Tontitown, named after the explorer Henry de Tonti. While looking for a new location for his followers, Bandini found the land of Tontitown inexpensive and quite similar to his parish's homeland of Valle di Pasuvio in northern Italy. Despite losses made during the journey due to exposure and diseases brought by giant mosquitoes, Bandini and his parish arrived in northwest Arkansas and established Tontitown. Here, settlers began a new type of life, but the church remained a crucial part of their community that continued for generations up till today. The St. Joseph's Catholic Church was established by the Father himself, and despite going through 3 different buildings, the faith remains alive. The destruction of the church has many different variations that have been passed down through the generations.
Father Bandini, who founded Tontitown, was the priest at the time, and his rectory was in the back of the church, and he was in the middle of the night sleeping in the church. And I always heard the Indians from Oklahoma came over and set it on fire.
The fire happened in the first little church, and Father was living there, but they used it for Mass also. And actually it was set afire by some renegade kids or young men. And Father Bandini was able to extinguish the fire, and he saved the picture of St. Joseph, and that's the reason that our parish is called St. Joseph's Parish.
When the Italians came to Tontitown, just like anybody new coming in, they weren't really well received. And there's a newspaper article and it says, Dago's coming. You know, they just weren't really well received.
I know what Father Bandini did. He got him a gun, and he patrolled it, and he made the statement that we are here to stay, and we are not afraid to fight.
After rebuilding the church, another setback caused destruction in the community.
It got taken out by cyclones or a tornado, and so this old church on the corner is really the third church.
Mary Maestri, one of the residents closest to this theme, has her own personal story to tell.
We lived in the house that is still standing. It's lawyers are in it now. It's catty-cornered across the street, and we had a basement. And I remember my father gathering all of us up to go down to the basement. And as he opened the basement door and the first of us started down, he said, "Wait, it has passed." It didn't do anything to our house, but it did blow down the church across the street.
Despite the many incidences, St. Joseph's was rebuilt and the parishioners' faith never wavered. Mary Maestri Vaughn has lived in Tontitown for the majority of her life. Both of her parents were original Italian immigrants that came with Father Bandini.
My father came from Italy when he was 5 years old in 1895. The church wasn't just a building, it was our spiritual home. And I can close my eyes and picture where everybody sat. You sat in the same pew.
Like many who grew up in Tontitown, Mary has many joyous memories of St. Joseph's and the Tontitown schoolhouse.
When I was young, all of the school children, we took turns in maintaining, dusting, cleaning, taking care of the church, and the sisters, the nuns, I should say, that taught at Tontitown. They volunteered us for everything.
Riley Tesoro also had a vivid childhood with the church and stories about a favorite nun.
I guess I was also a favorite of one of the nuns there. Her name was Sister Bernadine, and she was from Newfoundland, actually. She'd send me to the store to get something, and then I've always got a treat when I come back. One of the treats I loved was that German chocolate cake that she made. Oh, I'd kill for that. But it was great. But there was another time, this little sister I was telling you about, Sister Bernadine, I didn't have a bicycle. And she said, if you say 1,000 Hail Marys, I'll ask Jesus to get your bicycle. So I did. I didn't fudge on it either. And one day I come up and I said, I'm done. And then somebody came to the door one day and said, Sister wants to see you. Sure enough, she had a bicycle up there. It was a girl's bicycle, but it didn't make any difference to me. I mean, I served Mass there. There was one year, my aunt who raised me, that she was pretty religious, and she made sure I went to church about every day. And this one Lenten season, which lasts 40 days, well, I used to serve. And I served, this other guy and I served every day in Lent, including Sundays, except he missed one day. His name was Rudy Costa. And I did, that was a pretty good feat for me, because I did all of them.
So it holds not only for me, but for everyone that's in this parish, personal memories. It's not just brick and mortar. It was our spiritual home.
But not all things beautiful occurred inside the church. Some of Mary's toughest times were faced inside the archaic building, and she continues to recollect on those hardships today.
During World War II, Father Schaefer was our priest. He was still here when I was engaged to a young man I had grown up with all my life. He was in the service, and we went to Father and asked him to marry us when he was home on leave. And Father visited, and he stood up, and he did like this. And we stood up, and he said, "Go on, children, come back after the war." Was the smartest thing he ever did for me. I grew up, and my fiance didn't. And so I remember sitting in the church. I was torn about what to do. I didn't know. And I can show you that on this side of the church, that second window, I sat one afternoon, the whole afternoon, praying that God would show me what to do. And before I left the church, I knew. I gave him his ring back.
However, after 119 years, the church's once brilliant structure is decaying, and to the grief of the people who once inhabited its walls, it will be taken down.
I went to the meeting the other night when they were talking, and it has to come down. We become sentimental about our homes and about things that our memories hold, and it's difficult sometimes to separate the two. But right now it has asbestos. So there's everyone that lives here is, they were married, they saw maybe their parents were married there, all the baptisms and everything that happened there. But the church has to be. We have to consider that it's really dangerous to let it stand any longer. But it's difficult at the same time to see it go. But your faith is here, and we have to realize that that is brick and mortar.